Sports, a bridge that brings people together. And here in the Commonwealth, it's no different. From the gridiron to the hardwood and beyond, we all have a team we love to talk about. Now for the teams you care about, here's Heartland Sports Live with Trevor Rice.
And welcome into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM, and we are also live streaming on ESPNRadio1061.com. Trevor Rice in as we're coming off of another big weekend of football, and we're going to talk about the pro side of things. We'll talk about college football this hour here locally, and Hardin County football. We'll look at LaRue and Meade County and high school football here in this opening segment, which is going to be presented by our buddies over at CC Power Sports, where you can drive, well, a new or pre-owned Suzuki ATV, motorcycle, or scooter while the deals are hot. CC Power Sports, exit 121, just south of the Snyder at Brooks Road off I-65. Get your hands on a new or pre-owned Suzuki ATV, motorcycle, or scooter, like I said. They're just a short drive up I-65 in Shepherdsville. Well, a lot to talk about here coming out of the weekend. We're going to talk about the pro side of things with the Titans, Bengals, and the Colts. We'll get to college with Kentucky, Louisville, and Western Kentucky. Let's talk about the high school level, first of all, because the playoffs are here, people. Whether you want to like it or not, they are here. Even though I feel like the regular season went by way too fast. Can we all agree to that? Where did the high school football regular season go here in 2019? Like, it seemed like it was there and then just took off before we could even, like, develop a relationship. And now we're here to week one of the high school football postseason, which our game will be this Friday night at 7:30 p.m. It'll feature Elizabethtown taking on Thomas Nelson, a meeting which happened back in the regular season a few weeks ago, which saw Elizabethtown just completely just blowing out Thomas Nelson by the score of 54-0, as the Colonels just could not get anything going in that game, or the Generals, excuse me, I said the Colonels. The Generals under Thomas Nelson just could not get anything going in that matchup. In fact, I want to go back and look at some of the stats of that game in particular, because if you look at what Elizabethtown did, there's a reason. The defensive side of the ball has been stout throughout the majority of this stretch in the regular season for Elizabethtown. But Clay Games, I mean, offensively in that first meeting, 6 of 8, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. They didn't ask too much of him, and because they were running the football effectively, like with Joseph Becker, who had 8 rushes in that game, 126 yards, a couple of touchdowns. TJ Allen had 1 rush for 84 yards. Charles Evans, 64 yards off of 4 carries. So when you're running the football that well, 339 yards on the ground, you would expect that you don't have to depend on Clay Games to make much happen in the passing game. And so when you win 54-0, you feel like there's enough confidence there. And obviously Coach Brown's going to tell his team, look, we're 0-0 right now. We're trying to get to 1-0 here in this postseason. You don't want to overlook your opponent, obviously, but I feel like Elizabethtown is going to outmatch this Thomas Nelson team at the line of scrimmage. I feel like the running game, the game plan that Mark Brown and his staff go into in this game is just going to be too overwhelming for the Generals to do anything with in this one. And I feel like the way that Elizabethtown controls the football and chunks up yardage play after play after play, it's just going to wear down that defensive front of Thomas Nelson, and they're going to be out of this game before you even know it. I'm just saying. It's the way it goes, unfortunately. It's high school football. Some teams are going to be really down, and Thomas Nelson is one of those teams that are really down this season. And so 7:30 p.m. will be the kickoff. It's going on this Friday night, round 1 of the playoffs. It's Thomas Nelson at Elizabethtown. 7:05 will be the pregame, and you can catch all of the action here on 106.1 ESPN Radio and online, ESPNRadio1061.com. So that is our game of the week. Let's talk about this past Friday, though, because we saw Fort Knox pick up their their third victory on the season. First one that we've seen, though, in person since calling Fort Knox football, Bobby and I. So I guess that's what I was thinking of mostly, as the Eagles picked up their third victory on the season, pretty much taking care of business on Friday night against Caverna, winning 42-22. And in fact, just talking about that game real quick, it was a story of turnovers. Caverna, 3 ill-advised passes from Ben Rhodes, and then a fumble that went through his leg, or it was a low snap that went through his legs, and Fort Knox was able to recover just because they had so much speed penetrating the football at that point. And that's exactly what Friday night was. Early turnovers, which led to Fort Knox points, and Caverna could just never fully recover in that ball game on Friday night, in which Fort Knox ran away with it and then played some reserves. Caverna got some big plays there in the second half, mainly in the fourth quarter, as Rhodes had a couple of long touchdown runs, 57 yards and 43 yards respectively, and then a long pass play too that went for like 46 there in the second half from Caverna. But it was all Fort Knox and the seniors on that ball club for West Arnold, picking up their third victory. Of course, they picked up the win over Fort Campbell earlier this season, winning 19-10. But a huge shout out, Trey Rousey, number 17. Also, number 7, Sidney Gradney. Two kids who put it out on the line. They had a big game on Friday night, and playing all 4 of their high school football years at Fort Knox. That is rare, my friends. That is very rare. Like you don't understand, because parents get shifted from post to post. So the fact that those 2 kids were able to play their entire high school football career at Fort Knox is pretty amazing. And what they did, I guess you could pretty much put them in that category of helping this team move forward and raise the expectations of Fort Knox football. I did notice that the roster looked a little bit bigger this year than last year, so I noticed that the coaching staff is starting to get more kids to come out. Now, I do know that a couple of kids have come on base within the last year as well to kind of help that. But on that same note, you have to appreciate what the coaching staff is doing. They have these kids motivated, they're playing harder, and they picked up their third victory of the season. Now, most people look at that and say, yeah, it's 3-7. Well, if you saw where this team was just 2 years ago, you would say that that is that's a huge improvement, considering the fact that 7 wins in 2 years under Wes Arnold here at Fort Knox was never even thought of the previous decade. Plus, probably, if I were to look back. I'm just trying to remember. I'd give or take a decade before Wes Arnold took over the head coaching job and instilled some toughness in these kids. So they pick up their third victory. They appreciated it, and a lot of the folks who were tuning in online, which you can catch all the football games, ESPNRadio1061.com. We had a few parents and people, whether on base somewhere else here in the country or overseas, were listening to us, so we appreciate that. Fort Knox, though, as we look at the postseason, will be taking on Holy Cross out of Louisville, as we're waiting for them to decide on the second and third seedings in their district. And so it's going to be just looking at what Fort Knox will be facing. They're going to be taking on a Holy Cross team that they had a tough outing just a couple of weeks ago in that one, October 18th, in fact, losing 54-6. It's going to be a tough uphill battle for Fort Knox, but you win the last regular season, you win on senior night, you send out your seniors strong, what very well could possibly be their last home game ever, and you're going to be taking on a tough Holy Cross team on the road this time. You had them at home a few weeks ago. Now you're going to be on the road. Weird things happen in football. So I'm not saying they're out of it, but it's going to be a tough challenge as Holy Cross out of Louisville has had a phenomenal season. Only 2 losses on the year up until this point. So, in fact, they won against Walton Verona on Friday night by the score of 41-21. Did the Cougars, which I got to say, I'm not a fan of their logo. Not a fan of their logo. Not at all. Let's look at some other area teams, though, as Elizabethtown, Central, John, North, all in action, LaRue County, Meade County. We're going to cover every single one of them as Elizabethtown picking up another victory on Friday night, winning 39-12 over Lloyd Memorial, extending their winning streak to now 6 straight ball games. Well, still only 2 losses on the season, 8-2, as they will be hosting Thomas Nelson. Like I said, that's going on this Friday night at 7:30 p.m. here on 106.1 ESPN Radio. John Hardin football on Friday night as they were in action against Greenwood, picked up a victory to close out their season, winning 14-6. They will be at Spencer County this Friday night on the road at 7:30 p.m. kickoff, as that's going to be a reasonable road trip for John Hardin. And just real quick, let's scout out their opponent here. Spencer County on the year, 4 losses on the season. I'm not going to say that John Hardin's not going to be able to compete in this game. It is going to be a tough challenge for them, as they ended up losing 45-31 a couple of weeks ago to Spencer County. Hey, maybe if the script is flipped here, you just never know. It could be one of those games that maybe Spencer County fumbles it, has an interception. Turnover's going to be huge in this game. It could be a difference. If John Hardin can get 1 or 2 of those plays to go their way, who knows? They could pull off the upset over Spencer County this Friday night. North Hardin football, they're keeping the undefeated streak alive, the undefeated season that is, as they won 48-20 over PRP, Pleasure Ridge Park, on Friday night, as they won again by double digits, 28-point victory. 10-0 on the season. They will host Barron County this Friday night. 7:30 p.m. will be the kickoff. And just going back to that game real quick that happened earlier in the season that wasn't too close a couple of weeks ago, winning 55-12. I would suspect that defense is going to come to play. In fact, the driving force for this team to have so much success this season, I think, goes through that defense, as they know they have a chip on their shoulder, and they're coming out to punish teams on the offensive side. Barron County, I kind of feel bad for you just a little bit, as I have a feeling that because these kids are really motivated, especially the kids who don't necessarily have a scholarship going into next year or have received any scholarships. They're wanting to make even bigger plays. And if I'm Barron County, I'm just a little bit scared, especially after losing to them 55-12 just a couple of weeks ago. Let's go and look at Central Hardin, and you were kind of curious how they would respond to that loss to North Hardin, and they had a tough one. We knew South Oldham was going to present a challenge, but I don't know if we knew, Bobby and I, it was going to be a 43-7 challenge. And Central losing the last two games of the regular season. They are going to host Meade County this Friday night at 7:30 p.m. A team they had beaten just a few weeks ago, 43-7. It seems like we go back to October 18th with a lot of these teams. It's basically rematches from their October 18th week for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but that's just the way it lined up this year. Meade County, Central Hardin over in Cecilia, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. And Meade County ended up losing 43-7 to Central. Central, I don't know if they had a hangover from that North Hardin game or it was just the fact that South Oldham was that good. Maybe it was a combination of both. But, and I say but, I expect this team to come out with a purpose Friday night and want to play in a rematch against North Hardin. Because it doesn't matter. These last 2 weeks at this point, they just don't matter for Central Hardin. They got to look ahead. They host a game this Friday night, and then if they win, and North Hardin wins, we've got a big matchup in Radcliffe next Friday night, and I'm just letting you guys know that's where we're going to be. And that's why we're hoping those two teams come out on top so that we have yet another good playoff game here in Hardin County. Let's go ahead and check out some other area teams real quick as if I can find LaRue County in just one moment. LaRue County, they're going to be in a tough challenge this Friday night. They're taking on a Bardstown team that just took them to the woodshed and just had their way. 42-0 earlier this season. LaRue County finishing their season off with a loss against Russell County, losing 34-28. And now they take on a Bardstown team that is hungry, and they're going to want to get through this LaRue County team to get back to Elizabethtown, which that game could happen next week as well. Elizabethtown and Bardstown. That would be another good game in the area. That'd be going on next Friday night at 7:30 p.m. And let's just check out Meade County real quick as Meade County was in action as well. Of course, we know they're going to be playing Central Hardin this Friday night in the playoffs. DeSales, they get a big victory to close out the season, 14-10. In fact, they won their last two regular season games against Barron County and DeSales. They won 42-12 against Barron County, 14-10. I wonder if Barron County regrets joining this district yet, knowing that between North, Central, and Meade, all of those three schools pretty much took Barron County down pretty handily in all those contests. So I'm wondering if Barron County kind of regrets joining the district at all. But Central Hardin, Meade County, like I said, 7:30 p.m. in Cecilia this Friday night. That's a look at high school football here in Hardin County and the surrounding area. And week one of the playoffs, people. Can you believe that already? Where did this regular season go? We'll keep you updated on Heartland Sports Live. I'll update you guys next Monday, 5 until 6 on the games as the postseason progresses, and we'll see how far our teams go. I can tell you for a fact, they're looking at championships. 3 of our teams, they're eyeballing it. Elizabethtown is feeling it right now. North Hardin especially is feeling it right now. In fact, like I said, their defense feels like they have a chip on their shoulder. Central Hardin, they're going to want to bounce back from those 2 losses. Meade County, look out. That could be a long night for you this Friday night. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Meade County, look out. Trevor Rice with you. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM. We are also live streaming on ESPNRadio1061.com. When we come back, I will look at college football because I like college football. We'll close out the hour with some NFL action, talking about the Colts, the Bengals, who are now officially the worst team in the National Football League. In fact, I saw somebody post up a funny meme. Bengals 27, bye week 30. After the Dolphins won yesterday against the Jets, the Bengals are now the only winless team in the National Football League. And here I thought the Dolphins were going to be the worst team this season. Anything Miami can do, Cincinnati has proven to do it better. We'll talk about NFL action later this hour. Maybe we want to talk about it later this year because maybe nobody wants to talk about the Bengals or the Titans' loss yesterday to the Panthers. Maybe everybody's looking to next year already. I'm just saying. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio. Back with more after this.
Hey, this is Ryan Lemon from Kentucky Sports Radio, and you're listening to Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio.
Welcome back into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM. We are live streaming this hour on ESPN Radio 1061.com. Go ahead and check me out on social media at Radio Trevor Rice on Twitter, Trevor Rice on -air. Like me on Facebook. I have a link posted on my Twitter account that you'll see that goes to the Apple Podcast link, and you can go and download every show and listen to it on the go. Maybe you're on a long road trip and you're looking for something to listen to. You want to hear something about local sports. Well, you can go back and listen to Heartland Sports Live and download each and every show from the Apple Podcast Center. And hopefully you do give me some hits and some downloads on that, because I would greatly appreciate it. Trevor Rice in with you as we've talked high school football this hour already and covered all the area teams, and we'll continue to cover them as everybody will be in the postseason. Round 1 of the playoffs, district battles going on, and we are going to anticipate a lot of games that could be lopsided this Friday night. I have a feeling a lot of the games here locally, the battles probably just aren't going to be as close. I feel like the North Hardin game could be a blowout. I feel like the Central and Meade game, that game might be a little more competitive, actually. It seems like Meade County has discovered something. Ever since getting Mofield back, their quarterback, it seems like they've started to figure something out, and offensively have looked just a little bit better, even though they struggled against DeSales. But DeSales is a good team. In fact, they just won a championship. I don't think it was last year, but 2 years ago. So that was not exactly the easiest of games for them to try to win on Friday night, but they still did, winning 14-10. E-Town, I have a feeling that game's going to be a blowout. I think the John Hardin and Spencer County game could be very competitive. That might be the one competitive game in the area this Friday night, outside of the Central and Meade game, if Meade Counties, if they come to play and can somehow shut down. You're not going to be able to shut down the running game and the passing game of Central. You got to take one of those phases away. So if they make Central run the football to try to beat them, their chances might be better. But let's be honest. If you put Gavin George out on an island, who is stopping him? Who's stopping him? All you got to do is throw the football up, and he outsizes everybody in the secondary for Meade County. I don't know. I'm glad I don't have to coach against that. Coach Mofield, good luck to you on Friday. And good luck to all the area coaches. In fact, I want to see our teams go deep into the postseason and prove to the city boys, the city schools, that these small town communities can play some foosball as well. Let's talk college football right now, because we had two teams not in action, Louisville and Kentucky. They were having bye weeks, much needed bye weeks. Of course, Kentucky coming off of a victory against Missouri last Saturday as they won 29-7. Louisville coming off of a victory against Virginia 28-21. Now both teams getting to reset. As Louisville, they sit at 5-3 at the moment. Kentucky, they're sitting just below 500. Or no, they're right at 500. Excuse me. They're 4-4 on the year. And now we get to see where these two teams go moving forward. So we know that each of them has 4 games left here in this regular season. Louisville, they have Miami on the road this Saturday. Then they play on the road at NC State. And then they close out the season at home against Syracuse and on the road at Kentucky. So 3 of their 4 remaining games are on the road, Louisville, that is, as that's not the most ideal situation, but it's a few games where I feel like they can be not only competitive, but possibly come away with some victories. Especially you look at this Miami team. I feel like Louisville is right on par with them. Yes, it's on the road, but Miami, if we want to just kind of just question their fan base, doesn't show up to their home games very well. So that's not going to feel like as much of a home game as maybe you would anticipate back in the early 2000s when Miami football was relevant. NC State, that game could be a little more on the tougher, challenging part, just for the fact that it is on the road, and NC State always seems to play better, a lot better at home than they do away. You have Syracuse at home. Syracuse is down this year. They have not been the team that everybody thought they were going to be at the beginning part of the season. And hey, Kentucky is without their primary quarterback. So when you take Terry Harris out, that makes that game wide open for Louisville as well. In which we're gonna talk a bunch about that game. I have a feeling just looking at that matchup, that game. If you're Kentucky, you have to win. I almost feel like Kentucky's in a must-win situation in that one. That could be, a deciding factor whether or not they make a bowl game, which I don't know if I necessarily buy into that right now, but that could be a deciding factor. So that game could be huge for that reason. But I also feel like that's a huge game for Mark Stoops as well, because you've been at Kentucky, You've been here longer than Coach Satterfield and his staff. You've established something at that university. And even though, yes, you're without your primary quarterback, you're playing the game in your own backyard. So I feel like there's a lot more pressure on Kentucky in that game than Louisville, because I think Louisville has a chance to be bowl eligible. That I feel like they can win one of their next 3 games very easily. Which, wouldn't that be something? This coaching staff getting this team to a bowl game in their first season after it was gloom and doom last year with only 3 wins. That would be impressive. And I don't think anybody gave them credit. And I think they very well easily could become bowl eligible this week against Miami. And if not, they still have NC State and Syracuse. They have Syracuse at home. At the very least, I think they can win that one for sure. But I feel like they can play tough enough that they can keep all these games close coming up, because the ACC is not anything that anybody's talking about at this point. Yes, Clemson and Wake Forest have been ranked this year, but outside of Clemson, everybody's beatable. And Louisville beat Wake Forest. Granted, it was a basketball score of 62-59, but Louisville still won, right? So I think Louisville can become bowl eligible over the next 3 weeks, as they only need one more win, people. Kentucky still needs a couple of victories. Let's look at their remaining schedule. They have Tennessee at home. Tennessee has been a questionable story throughout the season. In fact, I have not looked to see what Tennessee has done recently, even though they beat South Carolina, who also beat Kentucky by 20 points. You look at Tennessee, they beat UAB. So a couple of weeks ago, beating South Carolina. They lost to Alabama, but people felt like they played competitively in that one. They come out, they beat South Carolina pretty convincingly. They beat UAB, which, if you're Tennessee, you should beat UAB 10 out of 10 times. I'm just throwing that out there. Tennessee and Kentucky this week. Tennessee will still have Missouri and Vanderbilt coming up as well. Whereas Kentucky, let's look at their schedule right now. They play Tennessee this week at home, coming out of a bye week. So I do like their chances just for the fact they're coming out of a bye week. They're able to get a little more healthy and being able to have that extra week of preparation for Tennessee coming into this one. Kentucky still has Vanderbilt. That is a very winnable game. So that I feel like they can get to their 5th win on that if they don't get a victory against Tennessee this week. Then they have Tennessee Martin. Okay, yeah, Kentucky's going to become bowl eligible. They can beat Vanderbilt. I feel like Kentucky can be in the game against Vanderbilt, obviously. They play Tennessee Martin, and they still have Louisville. Plus they have Tennessee, who, until recently, you were questioning whether or not that coaching staff was even going to be there next year. Yeah, I feel like Kentucky and Vanderbilt, or Kentucky and Louisville, rather, could become bowl eligible even before their meeting. But if they don't, just know that one of those two teams could be depending on that win in their rivalry game at the end of the season to become bowl eligible. Wouldn't that be something? But I don't think either one of those teams wants that game to come down to that. it's still going to have big meaning for the two schools just because they want to have that pride of winning the rivalry and have bragging rights, I guess, because of it. Plus, you get to go into your bowl season looking a little better as well. You have a victory. Last game was a win. So you kind of have a little bit more swagger going into your bowl matchup, whoever you're going to be faced off against. But just looking at the next 3 weeks before that Kentucky-Louisville game, I feel like both of these teams could easily become bowl eligible. Which, that's what you try to do. If you can't win a championship, you just want to be bowl eligible and play in December or January. You'd more so want to play in January than December, but I think you'll still take a December game regardless if you are both of those programs. Let's go ahead and look at Western Kentucky real quick, as Western Kentucky was the lone team in the state in action on Saturday night, and they ended up losing at home by the score of 35-24, dropping to 5-4. Western Kentucky, they're one of those teams that I don't know if they could become bowl eligible with 6 wins, just for the fact that I don't know if anybody's going to take them being a 500 team. I almost feel like they need 7 wins to become bowl eligible, in which you look at the remaining schedule. They play Arkansas. I'm not liking their chances in that one. They'll probably drop to 500. Then they play Southern Mississippi on the road. That one could have some hope. At least you're thinking, if you're a Western Kentucky fan, right? You're hopeful that your team can compete in that one. And if you do, even though it's a road game, still could have a chance to win that one, which would put you to 6-5, and then you close out the season at home against Middle Tennessee. I feel like you have to win 2 of your remaining games, and with 3 weeks left, I'm not liking the chances against Arkansas this week on the road. Granted, it's a noon kickoff, but still, it's Arkansas. It's going to be a tougher battle. But hey, I don't know if I was necessarily giving Western Kentucky a chance against Army, and look what happened there. 17-8. They came out winners. You know what? Possible upset alert. Arkansas is not the best team in the SEC. In fact, they are struggling this season. They're losing to everybody, including San Jose State. So looking at this matchup, I don't know if you want to consider it upset alert, even though I guess technically it kind of should be, because Arkansas is in the SEC, which everybody looks at that as obviously a Power 5 conference that the team should be a little bit better. I wouldn't count Western Kentucky out. Their defense could very well keep them in that ball game. And hey, we've seen some strange things happen. Boy, have we seen some strange things happen, especially this season with Western Kentucky football. Games that they should have won, they lost. Speaking of Central Arkansas earlier this year. Games that I felt like they probably should have lost, they won. Army. Then they lose a tight one against Marshall by 3. They lose to Florida Atlantic by 11. Hey, maybe they're not out of it yet. Maybe Western Kentucky is not out of it yet. And by some miracle, they can pull off, which would be a big win. If you can beat Army and Arkansas in the same year and then lose to Central Arkansas, what a strange season, first of all. But that is pretty remarkable on what this coaching staff has done already in the transformation of this program in year 1. That just shows that they had some talent on this roster. They just didn't have anybody to guide it over the last couple of years. So we'll see when they close out the season, like I said, against Southern Mississippi and also Middle Tennessee. Let's look at some stats on Saturday from this Western Kentucky game as they lost 35-24. Like I said, the Owls improving to 6-3 overall. Ty Story, 32 of 47. Again, I don't like the fact that he has to throw that much. It's concerning. you want to be better in the ground game. When you start slinging the ball around as much as Western Kentucky did, 3 interceptions on Saturday from Ty Story, I don't like throwing the ball that much. 32 of 47, 380 yards, 2 touchdowns, did have those 3 interceptions on Saturday. Gaj Walker had 14 carries for 53 yards, and that's where not having a running game hurts you. You start getting in a situation where you have to start slinging the ball around. You become one-dimensional. Eventually, a defense is going to figure you out, and they're going to step in front of a pass or two, and they're going to get you. And that's exactly what happened on Saturday with Florida Atlantic. As Florida Atlantic offensively with Chris Robinson went 18 of 29, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. The most important stat there, a goose egg in the interception category. So 35-24 the final as Florida Atlantic picked up a victory over Western Kentucky. And we'll see where the Hilltoppers, the Wildcats, and the Cardinals are moving forward. I feel like that all 3 teams could be bowl eligible. I know that for sure Louisville and Kentucky can be bowl eligible. All they need, Louisville just needs 1 more win, Kentucky with 2 more, and I feel like they can get those 2 against Vanderbilt for sure, and I feel like they can get that one against also who was the team that they were facing? No Name University, Kentucky, Tennessee Martin. That's who it was. I knew it was some Tennessee school, Tennessee Martin. So I feel like they can get victories over those 2 universities, and Kentucky can, and become bowl eligible before even looking at that Louisville and Kentucky game. But if Vanderbilt somehow pulls off the win over Kentucky, Kentucky could very well be 5-6 going into that Louisville matchup, and it might be a must-win situation for them to become bowl eligible. So we'll have to monitor that over the next several weeks to see if that actually does come true, as we're going to, I guess, wrap up the month of November with some possible drama over in Lexington on November 30th. Trevor Rice with you. It's Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM, and we are also live streaming on ESPN Radio 1061.com. Again, you can go on to my Twitter account at Radio Trevor Rice, as I have on there a way for you to go and download and listen. Yes, you can go and download and listen to every show on the Apple Podcast Center. A link on my Twitter account at Radio Trevor Rice. Coming up, let's talk some NFL action. Bengals, which I'm sure Bengals fans don't even want to acknowledge they still have a team at this point. Tennessee Titans fans, heck, you guys might not want to acknowledge the fact that even though we are Titans affiliates, that you still have a team at this point, losing to Carolina yesterday. We'll talk about the Indianapolis Colts as well coming up in the next segment, and get you going into the rest of your work week, and talk about some of the weekend matchups once again, as we'll once again review the E-Town and Thomas Nelson playoff game this Friday night. We'll tell you more about that again coming up here after the break. It's on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM, and we are live streaming on ESPN Radio 1061.com. And welcome back into Heartland Sports Live on 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM. And we are also live streaming on ESPN Radio 1061.com. Go to the Apple Podcast link on my Twitter account at Radio Trevor Rice, in which Trevor Rice, I'm hanging out with you here this hour. And we're talking about high school football. We did that in segment 1. Also in segment 2, we talked college football. Kentucky and Louisville coming out of bye weeks, trying to become bowl eligible. Western Kentucky falling on Saturday. They're still trying to become bowl eligible. And we're hoping that all 3 teams eventually do. But still 3-4 weeks for a lot of these teams to play. And we'll see if they can bring it home and play a December game come next month and get bowl eligible, because we want to see our boys play one extra game here in the Bluegrass. So let's go ahead and talk the pro side of things now, as we're going to talk Colts, we're going to talk the Bengals, and we're going to talk about the Titans. This might be a bad day to talk about all of the above because two teams are coming off of a loss, and the third team is coming out of a bye, which had a meme made of it, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals, who are still winless on the year. I saw a meme, and I was talking about this earlier in the show. Somebody posted Cincinnati Bengals 27, NFL bye week 30. Because that's the kind of year it's been for the Cincinnati Bengals and their fan base this year. I can tell you this much. Andy Dalton is going to be benched. I can tell you this much. The team is still winless. So maybe if they Bon Jovi it and live on a prayer, they're able to somehow come away with a victory in the second half of this season. Not saying it's going to happen, but there's always hope, right? As a fan, you just hope to win. Or do you want to win at this point if you're a Bengals fan? Do you want to just keep on losing and be guaranteed the number one spot? Because the Bengals picked up a victory yesterday, people. I don't know if you know about this, but the Bengals were the other winless team in the National Football League out of the AFC, and they picked up a win over the Jets. So that makes the Bengals the lone winless team in the National Football League at this point. So if you're a Bengals fan, do you even want to win at this point? Or do you want to keep on losing, get the number one draft pick, get maybe a high-profile quarterback in this year's upcoming draft, and then look at rebuilding? I'm a fan. I want to see my team win. I don't care what it takes. I don't know if I would want to watch my team just continue to just lose games. Like I do you want them to be that Lions team that went winless the entire stretch of a season? That almost takes talent of itself. Like, it's one thing to win every game like the 72 Dolphins team. It's another thing to actually get paid millions of dollars to lose every single game of the season, like the Lions did a few years back. And by a few years, I mean like more like a decade or so back. Take some serious talent, or was it a decade? I can't remember when the Lions season was, where they were just a complete dumpster fire. But this year, Bengals fans are feeling it. It's almost one of those situations where if you're a fan showing up to the field now, it's almost mandatory to wear a paper bag with some eye cutouts just so you can watch the game. But nobody has to see your face watching the game. It almost feels like one of those situations. But the Bengals coming off of a bye week, the Tennessee Titans, they're coming off of a loss yesterday to the Carolina Panthers after 2 straight victories. After benching Marcus Mariota, by the way, and starting Ryan Tannehill. They lost yesterday. First loss for Tannehill, losing 30-20, as the defense was getting kind of eaten up a little bit by that small guy. His name Christian McCaffrey. I've got him on my fantasy football team. He did some work for me yesterday, by the way. And so 30-20, and I saw the clip where the pediatric patients, the kids up there, and the players down on the field were waving to each other. I thought that was a pretty cool moment yesterday from that game. But the Tennessee Titans yesterday, let's just look to see what happened. Ryan Tannehill went 27 of 39, 331 yards, had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions in that game, which came in crucial moments. Derrick Henry had 13 carries for 63 yards, had 1 touchdown yesterday. Tannehill also had a rushing touchdown as he ran for 4 times, 38 yards. Receiving, A.J. Brown had 4 catches for 81 yards. Adam Humphries, 4 catches for 65. The lone touchdown in the passing game came from Derrick Henry, who had 3 receptions for 36 yards on Sunday. For the Carolina Panthers, it was Kyle Allen going 17 of 32, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 INT as the Panthers picked up, I guess, a much-needed victory for them coming off of that just devastating loss to the 49ers. Last week. Christian McCaffrey doing some work, 24 carries, $146 on the ground. That's an average of just over 6 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns, and I believe also may have had a receiving touchdown, in which he did 3 catches, 20 yards yesterday, and 1 touchdown through the air. The other touchdown going to Curtis Samuel, who had 3 catches for 62 yards. DJ Moore having a big day, having 101 yards receiving off of 7 receptions. So the Panthers doing some work on the Tennessee Titans yesterday. The Indianapolis Colts fell to the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, and the Steelers looked like gloom and doom there in the beginning part of the season. Now find themselves 4-4 on the year, and maybe the season still looks like it could be. It could have a bright side to it, even though Roethlisberger is out. Let's go ahead and look at that Colts and Steelers matchup from yesterday as I try to pull it up here. Let's try to get that. The Colts, Brian Hoyer, 17 of 26, 168 yards as Jacoby Brissett went down with an injury yesterday. Hoyer had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Marlon Mack had 21 carries for 89 yards yesterday. Paris Campbell had 3 carries for 27. Receiving game, it was Pascal with 76 yards off of 5 catches. Did have a touchdown yesterday. Jack Doyle had 3 catches for 22 yards and 1 touchdown yesterday as well. And Chester Rogers, the other touchdown receiver for the Colts, as he had 3 receptions for 22 yards. The Steelers, Mason Rudolph back in action after that was one of the scariest plays I can honestly say. A couple weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, whenever he got knocked out of the game and just fell backwards like that. That was honestly one of the scariest plays I think I've seen in any level of football. Glad he was okay, and he's coming back and doing some damage. Apparently 26 of 35. Didn't have the biggest of passing days, 191 yards, had 1 touchdown, 1 interception as well. 12 carries, though, in the rushing attack from Trey Edmonds, who had 73 yards on the ground. Receiving, it was Jalen Samuels with 13 catches, 73 yards yesterday. James Washington had 4 grabs for 69 yards, and Vance McDonald had 5 catches for 30 yards as the Steelers held on to defeat the Indianapolis Colts 26-24, in which it was a tight one going into the halftime break as well. Like that game never got out of hand for one or the other team, and both teams going back and forth with it. The Colts and Steelers 3-3 after the first quarter. Then it was 16-13 at the halftime break. The Colts with the lead. Then a safety in the third quarter from the Colts ended up pushing them to 18-13. A touchdown from the Steelers, and then it was each team had 6 points in the final quarter, and that was the difference for the Steelers, who held on to win 26-24. So that's a look at the NFL action. Once again, let's talk about the high school football game of the week this week, the Blandon Bird Whistle high school football game of the week for us here on 106.1 ESPN Radio. It's going on this Friday night at 7:30 p.m., and it'll be the Elizabethtown Panthers hosting the Thomas Nelson Generals. 7:05 is the pregame. Listen to us 106.1 ESPN Radio, 1400 AM. We will also live stream it on ESPN Radio 1061.com. So we hope you can join us. Bobby Thompson and myself will be on the call. And Elizabethtown looking to keep the season going with a win here in round 1 of the playoffs. John Hardin, of course, in action. They'll be taking on Spencer County on the road. Central Hardin will be hosting Meade County. And then North will be taking on Barron County here for all of your Hardin County matchups. LaRue County will be actually on the road taking on Bardstown at 7:30 p.m. Friday night as well. Good luck to all the area teams, though. We're hoping that we can keep this string going and that we're still calling football games throughout the entire month of November here on 106.1 ESPN Radio. Trevor Rice with you, though. Give me a follow on social media at Radio Trevor Rice on Twitter, Trevor Rice on Dash Air. You can like me on Facebook as well. Until next Monday, 5 until 6, as Heartland Sports Live will be back with you. We'll see you soon. Have a fantastic sports week, and we'll be back next Monday.